for a nice opportunity to come here and to make a presentation. We discussed with Erwin and Meinhard a couple of days ago the issues for the soil protection in German-speaking corner of Europe and also in the lower Danube. So it's not absolutely, but rather different approaches. So the baseline which we have in our region, so it gives us a lot of space where to go ahead. So anyway, I do believe that with the networking and partnership with the people like who are presented here, so it will be easier to overcome the difficulties and problems which are in the region now. Anyway, where is? So this one, yeah? So I would like to start a presentation with the zero. Zero means 0 kilometer, and before zero we have Danube, after zero Black Sea. And you can see some soil, a sandy soil and bushes. So I wanted to show this because this region had a privilege. It was not interesting for the authorities which ruled this region 30, 40, 50 and and more 2 years ago. So this small island, it remained practically untouchable for more than, and the state of nature in this region, in this island, is like it was 100 years ago. Practically no agricultural activity, no even military activity, no tourism and so on, because the region was blocked by the Soviet authorities and access was absolutely limited. So we have this, and due to the changes which are happening now, so this region is becoming more and more open, and Meinhard to talk in his presentation what is going on in the Danube Delta. Danube Delta is shared by 3 countries. Romania has the biggest part, it's around 85%, Ukraine around 14%, and a little bit more than 1%, it belongs to Moldova through the lower Prut region. So anyway, we also have recognized the necessity for the protection of the soils, because agricultural activity it gives income for more than 90% of the population. In spite of they can live in the big town, in the capital town, so 90% of national income comes from the different types of agricultural activity, including for such to sector which is to developing now. It's ecological tourism, organic farming, and so on. So, based on the data which we obtained, we can tell that 90% of all of the nitrogen which reaches the water ecosystems, it comes from agricultural activity and mainly from erosion. So, erosion gives a sediment a transport. And so as the relief in our country is rather flat, so it's possible to use such simple tools and measures to protect agricultural lands from the inundation. So it's very simple, and at the same time it's very efficient. So our different studies, they showed that around 90% of the sediments which could come with floods can be stopped in such way. Certainly, we have not too much agriculture, so not too much to hydrotechnical construction. The most important is to make the dams not too high. It depends on the river, but normally it is maybe till 2 meters. It's totally enough, at least now. So we have not recorded the floods which we had happened in Germany, Austria, Czech Republic last maybe 2 months. So our tooth rivers are not so big, and we have only half a kilometer of the Danube. So it's not too much. But floods occur, and main problem is not floods, it's droughts. So for last 25 years, we had 8 severe droughts. While in 80s and 70s, the frequency of droughts was maybe 1 per 7 years. Actually, we have 1, 3, 4 years. So the frequency has doubled. And certainly it affects a lot of traits, including the grazing animals. Mainly, animal breeding is organized near the private houses, in private households. So industrial animal breeding has reduced drastically after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Some attempts are going to be developed nowadays, and some farms, maybe with a capacity of 5,000-7,000 pigs, are being renovated or constructed. Certainly, the impact of animal breeding is not too high. But anyway, I have we have a population of around 1% of the population of the Danube Basin. And at the same time, Moldova is responsible for 2.5% of nitrogen, which reaches the water ecosystems. It means that there is a distance rather big in comparison with other countries, and efforts should be implemented in order to reduce the amount of nitrogen which comes from Moldavian territory. So the issue is, so I cannot say that it is a typical house. It's not a typical, but anyway, it gives understanding on how people used to live just maybe 15, 20 years ago. So, and this is, is there any sign? Oh, no. So, and this area, you see it is fenced with natural material. So it also gives an opportunity for people when they want to change it, not to throw it somewhere out like they could do with the metal or a beton or something like this. They can use it like a fuel, and so it is reused in any way. And in addition to it, 90% of actual animal breeding is organized in the houses, as I have already told. So it is the relict of the Soviet era. So it is a huge hydrotechnical construction which was made on the river with a flow of 2-3 cubic meters per second. You see that the facilities which have been created are for the much larger river. And the idea was to pump the water from the Danube and then through the channel to have around 50 cubic meters per second, so 25 times more than actual river, and thus to produce electricity. So this project totally failed, but unfortunately, not unfortunately, but so it was made, a number of artificial lakes were created with the mineralization, so TDS, more than 1 gram per liter, so it's admissible norm for irrigation in this area. So there was 3.5. And there was an order from the authorities, irrigate. No other chance, and collective farms, they had to irrigate. The result was awful. In a couple of years, all gardens, all orchards were yellow, not green, but yellow, and soils were salinized. So it took maybe to 20 years. So after the end of this period, when we have when these soils can be used again for the especially multi-annual plantations like orchards. So they are reused now. So the issue is that the harvest of fruits and so on is not as it could be expected. So we asked the farmers what did they expect. So they told some figures were, in my opinion, were not realistic, but anyway, efforts are undertaken and something will come, I hope, in the nearest future. So another issue is a culture. So for many years, we even didn't know that landscape can have a cultural value. So we used it, but we didn't know about that. And actually, a national park in this area was created. And the rules for the national park are the same as in Europe. But at the same time, so the attitude of local people, they do not know about the rules. And we organize a lot of seminars and trainings how to use natural heritage of these areas. So, and actually, a number of organic farms appear in this area, so it's mainly in wetland areas, and people come from urban areas for vacation, maybe 2-3 days of vacation, and special rules. And people are informed how to not to deal, but what a compartment should be during their stay in this region. So they know that it is a national park, that soil is very vulnerable, and it's necessary to take care about the soil. And actually, there is a big table which informs the people how to deal with the soil. So it is a new approach. So it's this to function has a social dimension, and a lot of people are coming, and especially now when people cannot to travel abroad, so they can, but to travels abroad are limited, and more people are coming to this area. So it is a new approach, but we do hope that it will go ahead. And just a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, a first biosphere protected area was created in Moldova in the Low Prut region. So these two areas, it's actually a concern for National Commission for UNESCO, and a number of projects are being implemented now. And we have 2 projects for the nitrogen management in biosphere reserve area and also in the national park. The issue is to reduce eutrophication in water ecosystems, and actually, so it is known, so we know and we have quantified the source of pollution with nitrogen in these 2 areas, and some recommendations were made, and we are expecting some to public events. I do not know if it happens because of the restrictions, but anyway, immediately after the end of restricted period, these activities will start again, and we hope to have good and positive feedback from local people, local authorities, and what is also important, local children. So we had a nice painting exercise yesterday, and local to public events with school children show that they are aware and they have a consensus on how to use the leaves which to fall in the autumn. They are different colors. It can be red color, it can be even green color, yellow color, and so on. And during these events, they show their pictures which they made from these leaves. They extract a material with which they can paint, and they do some very nice pictures like we can see here. So another one, so it is so I told that 90% of the animal breeding is organized near the private households, and it is an example of the sheep which were collected from people, so 10, 15 sheep, and and a shepherd has a responsibility for these sheep on open space. So he deals with that. He receives some money, and as much as bigger is number of sheep, so he has bigger salary. So it's again and nature and social aspect dimension of the animal breeding which we have now, and it is to sheep it's a specific animal, so it cannot stay in some facilities and to wait. It's not like cattle, but anyway, so it is organized not only for the sheep but also for the cattle. So vineyards, it is main agricultural sector of national economy. So, but I wanted to show you some smoke in behind. Unfortunately, it happens even now. In spite of it is strongly prohibited to fire the tillage in the forests and in the on the agricultural lands, but it unfortunately happens. So it is. You can see how it is constructed. So it is along the hill, and it allows to reduce the erosion which could come from the multi-annual plantations. Another example of the treatment of the vineyards. So it is typical to Soviet relict. So you can imagine what was happening during this era with the lands. At that time, average application of the copper sulfate, I mean the metallic copper, was around 20 kilograms per hectare. And very often it was not necessary, but the practices which were at that time, so the chairman of the collective farm, he didn't have any choice. If he doesn't spend a certain amount of the pesticide, he could be punished. Actually, the practices absolutely changed. So, and to such relicts were removed. They are not anymore in the landscapes, but it gives a picture how it was polluted, the land, during this time. Actually, we have a concentration of copper in soils practically on a natural level. So such practices have stopped maybe 10, 15 years ago. No such installations, no such facilities anymore. And it's good. And actually, on some places, if you go to the vineyard, you can see that you are somewhere in France or Italy, because new technologies, new approaches have come, and these vineyards are much more efficient. They produce a very good quality of wine, and it is exported so very large. Oh. Okay. So, and actually, we are in, so during the independence, people recognize that, that not only agricultural activity can give a profit, also nature conservation and biodiversity, it's also an issue which contribute to the development of the country. And if you look on what I wrote, so during the Soviet era, just 30 years ago, the lands which could be used for the protection of soil, and not only soil, biodiversity and so on, was around 2.5% of national territory. Actually, we have six times more. And it is expected that by the year 2030, the target is to have 20%. So it will give an opportunity to improve the practices, and not only the practices but also the technologies for the soil protection, not only on agricultural lands but through the protected areas. It is possible to have a better soil protection system on the national level. And it is another example. So we saw the hedge yesterday. In Moldova, actually, we apply this on a larger scale. So it's a landslide area which was strongly affected by agricultural activities in previous years. Actually, you can see that there is a forest of around maybe 10, 15 years old, which was planted by public. So it was not an order from Mold Silva to come and to plant. Actually, we have a National Day for the Trees and Bushes Planting, so it is in autumn, at the end of October, and a lot of people voluntarily go to plant the trees and bushes. And you see it is a very effective way. So a lot of areas are covered by forests with agricultural lands, and these forests, they protect from the landslide erosion, wind erosion, and water erosion. But erosion, as I told, is responsible for around 90% of the pollution loads which reach water ecosystems. So we can expect that when we reach the target of 20% of the territory under different protected measures, it will be possible to recalculate and to re-estimate the loads which are coming from agricultural lands to the water ecosystems. Another issue, it is bee production. Actually, it is estimated that bee sector is developed only for 1% of its capacity. And beehives, so it's old style of the beehives, and I'm very happy to be here in Austria and to say that in cooperation with Austrian International Development Agency, so there is a project which is aimed on the development of this branch of economy. And actually, a lot of the public authorities, so they are interested to have a melliferous plantations, even on the public lands. So it's new because before to plant some trees and it was okay, our locality is green. Actually, they think what types of plants to plant, and is it possible to have bees which will come and pollinate the, not only the public territory, but also the territory of private households who also produce a lot, and it will give additional income. So it is estimated that the harvest can be increased for 20–40% due to the pollination. So it is a new branch of agricultural activity which is going to be developed in the nearest future. So it is a landscape which I think you all could see in your countries. So it came for maybe from the pre-Soviet time. People knew about that, and they have constructed a lot of buffer water ecosystems which could reduce the sedimentation of main rivers and also the pollution of main rivers. At that time, I think they didn't know about the pollution, but they knew about the siltation. So it was a problem especially for the small ponds which were used for the irrigation. And when you have much siltation, so people thought what to do in order to reduce the sediment load. And one of the options was the constructions of to such water ponds and to reduce the sedimentation of the ponds which were used for irrigation and actually for other purposes. So it is again the hedge we saw yesterday, but it is the hedge along the road. So it helps to prevent, especially in winter, when we have a volcanic cyclone. So it helps to prevent traffic jams. So the roads are more free from the snow. And even these hedges, they stop. It's like a buffer between the pollution which comes from the surface of the road and could reach agricultural lands. At the same time, the research which was organized for the lead contamination showed that even in spite of that, due to the wind erosion, pollution can cover till 100 meters from the road. So the strip with 100 meters can be influenced and polluted from the roads. So what to do? So this one, in order to reduce this, the size of affected areas. It's a Moldavian village, so it is a typical village, and such communities give around 10% of nitrogen loads to the water ecosystems. You see the fence, so these fences are not as Tutmeinhardt showed, so it's mainly from the stone and the beton. Unfortunately, the mentality of the people doesn't allow to have this fence, which could be like a hedge. So they construct monumental fence in order to show it's my territory, don't come. And a lot of activities like animal breeding, like even the greenhouse, is organized on the territories near the house. And mainly the organic substances are used for the fertilization of the greenhouse area. So, and very often the results of the greenhouse, which is near the house, give very nice results for the incomes of the people. So they can improve the facilities for living, cars, and so on. So it is an approach which is used by locals in order to also and protect the soil, because in previous times, so all organic substances was transported to the nearest ravine. Actually, so they tried to use compost, to use the worms. Maybe they do not know that it is something like a scientific approach, but they do it. And certainly some recommendations for such kind of activities should be developed and presented to locals. Danube River. So Danube, it's a heart of Europe, and at the same time, it's a lot of Danube activities which are implemented, have been implemented in Moldova for last 20-25 years. They give very nice results. And one of these, it is, so during the Soviet Union time, small-scale agricultural systems were converted in large scale, very large. So average, so we had an orchards with an area of around 25,000 hectares. It was absolutely huge. Actually, so it is much more diverse, with a lot of diversity, with a lot of soil protection measures and so on. But this to Soviet system, it gave very good results for the first 2-3 years, and then it was more and more difficult. So is my time close to the end? Yeah. So wetlands, it's another issue for the protection of the soil. Wetland restoration activity is actually recognized as a priority for the saving of the rivers. And the target is to reconstruct around 25% of the wetlands by 2030. So 20% for the highlands and around to 30% for the wetlands. We hope that it will work. Vineyards again, and the last my slide, it is, I want to say some words about international nitrogen management system, which is being to develop now under UN. And all this region, Dniester-Prut, so it is 70% of the Moldovan territory and 30% comes from Ukraine. And a small part also comes from Romania. So 3 countries are involved in this case study, and this case study is, and this region is like a case study for Central Eastern Europe. So, and the issue is, main objectives are the development of scenarios for 25% of nitrogen reduction, estimations of the efficiency, because that very often we want to implement some measures in the sector which is not so responsible for the emissions of nitrogen, and we can miss much more important sectors which have much more a contribution to the nitrogen budget of the area, so it's necessary to estimate the efficiency, and also the recommendations for 25% of reduction of nitrogen by 2030. Certainly it is organized in cooperation with these 3 countries, Moldova, Ukraine, and Romania, and we do hope that we shall succeed. And it is 2 gentlemen who are authors of this presentation. Thank you for attention.